On April 6, 2020, a brand new digital empire was unveiled to a world that was suddenly trapped indoors. It was meant to be the defining entertainment platform of the modern mobile age, backed by an unprecedented war chest and the absolute elite of American commerce. Instead, the launch was a phantom strike. Within hours, the silence from consumers was deafening, signaling the immediate start of one of the fastest corporate collapses in history. $1.7 billion of investment capital dissolved into smoke in just under 200 days. The sheer speed of the destruction baffled Wall Street and humbled the titans of the media industry. This was not a slow decay or a quiet retreat into obscurity. It was a catastrophic high-velocity impact where money, talent, and technological arrogance collided head-first with an immovable wall of consumer indifference. The architect of this grand experiment was Jeffrey Katzenberg, a legendary studio executive whose past victories had fundamentally reshaped modern cinema. Katzenberg envisioned a radical transformation of digital narrative media. He believed that the modern consumer was starved for premier content formatted specifically for micro-moments. The core concept was simple yet audacious. 10-minute cinematic chapters engineered exclusively for mobile screens, delivering prestige production value in short-form video intervals. To execute this monumental vision, Katzenberg brought in Meg Whitman, the former chief executive of eBay and Hewlett-Packard. Whitman provided the formidable Silicon Valley administrative pedigree needed to complement Hollywood's creative spark. Together, this executive duo raised astronomical sums from every major entertainment studio and venture institution. Investors lined up to hand over millions, entrusting their capital to a pair of industry elders who promised to dominate the mobile frontier. The core value proposition was marketed as a revolutionary breakthrough called Quick Bite Entertainment. The strategy bypassed traditional pilot episodes, funding hundreds of original shows simultaneously with blockbuster budgets reaching up to $100,000 per minute. The executive leadership believed that high production budgets alone could force a shift in human habit, compelling millions of daily commuters to pay a monthly subscription for bite-sized drama. Engineering teams worked in absolute secrecy to build proprietary playback software known as turnstile technology. This feature dynamically shifted the camera framing from horizontal to vertical as users rotated their phones, creating a customized visual experience. However, this technical novelty came paired with extreme restrictive software controls. The platform aggressively blocked users from taking screenshots, recording clips, or sharing content on social media, deliberately severing the fundamental network effects of the internet. While the corporate leadership was building a locked garden, the actual target demographic was migrating toward an entirely different digital landscape. On TikTok, millions of young creators were crafting raw, authentic, and completely free short-form video content that spread virally through organic sharing. Unencumbered by high-concept Hollywood polish, these decentralized platforms captured human attention by allowing users to interact, remix, and share content instantly across global networks. The executive team dismissed these organic digital shifts as primitive noise, insisting that consumers would gladly pay up to $8 per month for polished narrative chapters. They built a subscription model behind a rigid paywall, isolating their expensive shows from the open web. By refusing to offer a permanent free tier or allow organic content sharing, the platform ensured that its expensive productions remained entirely invisible to potential subscribers scrolling through social media feeds. The fatal design flaw was not merely financial. It was an existential misunderstanding of human behavior. The product had been meticulously designed for a very specific hypothetical user journey: the distracted daily commuter looking for a quick distraction while waiting for a train or standing in line. Every strategic decision rested on the assumption that mobile users possessed fractured pockets of time throughout the busy workday. Then came the fateful global pandemic of April 2020. As the platform launched, cities around the world entered total lockdown, wiping out daily commutes and public transit routines overnight. Millions of potential users were suddenly confined to their living rooms, sitting mere feet away from massive television screens and established streaming services. The core use case for mobile-only micro-entertainment evaporated entirely in a matter of weeks. Internal tracking data revealed an appalling reality almost immediately after the application hit digital storefronts. Free trial conversions plummeted into single-digit percentages, while early download spikes decayed rapidly into flatlines. The application vanished from the top-ranking charts within days of its grand debut. The prospective audience was not trapped on subways looking at smartphones. They were on their couches watching traditional long-form television platforms. The financial metrics were utterly devastating. The company was burning through tens of millions of dollars each month on licensing rights, marketing campaigns, and technical infrastructure while drawing in a negligible trickle of actual recurring revenue. Pundits watched in shock as a brand that had raised nearly $2 billion struggled to convert even a fraction of its targeted subscriber base into paying customers. Panic swiftly infiltrated the upper echelon of leadership. In a desperate bid to adapt, engineers rushed to build casting features so users could beam the vertical content onto home television sets. But porting mobile-optimized 10-minute clips onto giant living room screens exposed the fundamental absurdity of the product. The core technical feature became an awkward, jarring artifact, rendering high-budget shows look bizarrely out of place in home theaters. Rather than confronting the deep structural flaws of the product itself, leadership initially pointed fingers at the global health crisis as the sole catalyst for their failure. Yet competing digital platforms were experiencing unprecedented record growth during the exact same period. Netflix added millions of subscribers, while short-form video on TikTok exploded into a global cultural phenomenon, proving that user demand for media was at an all-time high. The reality was an explicit autopsy of corporate vanity. Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman had designed a product based on how they believed the public ought to consume media, rather than observing how people actually used their devices. They treated short-form video as a mere delivery mechanism for legacy studio content, failing to comprehend that modern mobile video thrives on community, creator access, and frictionless viral distribution. By October 2020, just 6 months after the triumphant ribbon cutting, the cash reserve was rapidly depleting toward critical levels. Recognizing that recovery was mathematically impossible, Katzenberg made the extraordinary decision to pull the plug before the remaining capital was completely exhausted. In a brief, sober conference call with staff and investors, the founders formally announced the immediate shutdown of the enterprise. The final act was a humbling fire sale that underlined the severity of the miscalculation. The proprietary Turnstile software, once valued as a multi-hundred-million-dollar technical breakthrough, found no buyers due to complex patent disputes and limited commercial utility. The massive original content library, which cost well over $1 billion to produce, was eventually unloaded to Roku for less than $100 million. The sudden death of the platform sent shockwaves through the venture capital ecosystem and Hollywood boardrooms alike. It served as a stark, definitive proof that money, star power, and aggressive marketing cannot manufacture consumer demand out of thin air. An elite leadership team had spent 2 years building a fortress around an idea without ever testing whether anyone actually wanted to step inside. The forensic record reveals a textbook classic case of a solution in search of a problem. The enterprise suffered from an incurable blind spot, driven by executive hubris and an insular decision-making vacuum. In their rush to reinvent the television screen for the pocket, the founders neglected the basic law of the digital economy. Platforms do not dictate culture, audiences do. The enterprise burned through approximately $7 million for every single day it remained active in the marketplace. It stands as one of the most expensive corporate misadventures in history, a staggering monument to what happens when seasoned leaders mistake past industry triumphs for future digital fluency. The collapse permanently altered how venture capital firms evaluate media startups and short-form video investments. Today, the story remains a grim cautionary tale studied in business schools around the globe. It proved that the modern consumer cannot be forced into closed media silos or coerced into paying for bite-sized television when dynamic, interactive alternatives are readily available for free. The digital landscape moves fast, and it shows no mercy to legacy executives who refuse to adapt to its rules. In the end, the collapse was not caused by a single bad launch or an unfortunate global event, but by a total failure to respect the market. The $1.7 billion lesson proved that no executive pedigree is too prestigious to fail, and no war chest is large enough to buy immunity from basic user reality. When the history of streaming media is written, this short-lived experiment will remain its most expensive ghost.